I kind of realized that my niche was going to be multifamily. It was the most scalable way for me to get big.
Hello and welcome to episode 79 of the Smart Agents Podcast. My name is Michael Walter and I'll be your host. In today's episode, we are joined by Seth Teagle of real estate investment firm The Stream Group. In addition to building this growing real estate business, Seth works full-time as a firefighter paramedic. Throughout our conversation, Seth shares his advice for avoiding failure on your first investment, tips for real estate agents looking to partner with investors, and how the Stream Group has grown into the size it is today. Now, before we get on to today's featured interview, make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents Podcast. You can find the show on all major podcasting platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and now Amazon Music. Also, as you can see if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents YouTube channel. Click the bell to get notifications when each new episode is uploaded. And lastly, if you or someone else on your team has an awesome story or tip to share with our community, send us a message at feedback@smartagents.com. We're always on the lookout for new stories to share. All right, let's get on to the day's featured interview with Seth Teagle. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you do as well. The first thing I always like to do is have our guests introduce themselves. Who are you and kind of where you're at in the country?
Okay. So my name is Seth Teagle. I'm the principal at the Stream Group, which is an investment firm that does apartment syndications. We're vertically integrated, which just means that we do construction, property management, and then we syndicate our larger apartment deals for other investors. And I am located in Columbus, Ohio.
Awesome. So, what's interesting about your story is you kind of got into it a little bit differently. You're not, you don't have the real estate background. Tell me a little bit about what your background is.
Yeah. So I've had a career as a firefighter paramedic for the last 21 years. And I started doing that basically right out of high school, was doing some college and then got in the fire service and was kind of like, that was my one track. All I'm going to do, this is my career, and most guys that get in the fire service are kind of like military where, there's most of them are career, kind of like lifers, as we call it. They do the full 25, 30 years. And somewhere in there, 8-9 years ago, we started having kids and, life just continued to happen. I was like looking for something more. And so real estate investing and just kind of getting into long-term buy and hold strategy was started to be kind of like a side hustle for me. And it has just grown to be, a pretty big company now. And at this point, we're still maintaining our careers in the fire service. But, as things grow and change, you just never know.
Right. So what was that, that initial kind of push that made you want to start doing that?
Really for me is people always talk about like what their why is, like, why do they do the things they do? And my why has always been my family. And I really I found myself working. So our schedule is 24 hours on, and then we have 2 days off. And on those 2 days off, most firefighters have some other kind of side hustle job, whether it's construction, it's some form of contracting, or, they have other businesses that they own or they do, whatever. And, in Central Ohio, a lot of guys they'll work at a fire station and then they'll go work at another fire station on their days off, or they'll go ride a medic and they stay in the same kind of field as what they, it's what And, I had gone to college, was doing that. And I thought, I kind of wanted to get into something else that was maybe a little bit higher return on my time. And, I kind of bought into the whole, I wanted to build generational wealth. I wanted to just do something different. I wanted to make money while I was sleeping, like all those things. And so real estate really kind of seemed to be the vehicle that I wanted to use for that. And a guy that I had gone to college with, we were roommates actually. When I went to the fire service, he went into real estate and became a realtor. And then I had lost contact with him for a long time because back then there wasn't Facebook or MySpace and all those social media platforms. And as those grew, I reconnected with him. And at that point, he had a massive following. He was an investor, hard money lender, like doing all these things, and had a pretty big educational platform. And that really just it just kind of shocked me. Like, how is this guy, the guy that I knew, how is he this guy now? And it was just crazy. And real estate's really what changed his life. So that's kind of what got me started.
Right. I think it's interesting how, I think for a lot of people, there's always just that reservation of, I could never do this. I could, there's, how do you even get started in that? But then you do see a buddy that, from way back, like, oh, it can't be that difficult. Let's jump right in. But when you did get started, what were some of those first things that you really learned that, were taught to you that kind of helped jumpstart your investing career?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that I did, or the first thing that he told me when reached out to him, was I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which if nobody's ever read that, I mean, that one was just like a holy cow, like the light went off in my head. So that was the first thing that I think first actionable step that he gave me was to read that book. And then it was just kind of like, how do I get involved? Like he was lending at that time, but I didn't have enough experience for him to even lend to me. Right. And so it's like, when you're trying to get started, how do you do it and mitigate the risk to where you're not, I've seen guys that have they go to flip a house and they'll get in it and then they lose money, or they barely make any money, or, and people just kind of always say trial by fire. And I was like, well, I don't really have the time for that. I don't really have the risk tolerance for that. If I'm going to do it, I have one shot to really make it work. And so I was like, what do I do? So I actually found a contractor that was local that I knew and was flipping houses. And so I didn't have, a whole lot of experience in that, but what I had was time. So my days off from the firehouse, I had it through my career. I've managed teams. I've got a construction background, a bit like the building code, fire code background. And he needed somebody to manage his construction projects and then do some property management with the current rentals that he had. So I said, look, I'll work for free. I'll do whatever. I wanted to just learn the business. And I felt that was the best way for me to get involved and not have to put a bunch of capital at risk right away. And so I worked with him for about a year. And after that, I realized, I felt like I was ready to go. I kind of realized that my niche was going to be multifamily. It was the most scalable way for me to get big. And at the time I was still thinking maintaining my career and having the side hustle, and having multifamily was the most efficient way for me to do that after, I'd spent a year kind of driving all over Columbus, managing these flips and having rentals all over the place. It was very time consuming to go to each of these different locations. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. You kind of took that, almost apprenticeship approach to it, which is, it's interesting, having the firefighter background, because, those first months and so in the training and firefighting, it's almost that same kind of way. And so I think that's really smart to do that, so you don't burn yourself in the long run.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, for me, it was the one thing that my kind of initial mentor had always said was the first one's got to be a home run. It's either at the minimum, it has to be a base hit, right? But for you to really buy in, or for me, my spouse to buy in and be like, hey, you didn't lose a bunch of money. She was super nervous, it just, and seeing the first deal being a success is so important. I think too, for your confidence, as an individual person who's, stepping out of their comfort zone, maybe, and buying their first investment property. You hear all the horror stories from people that don't, most of it comes from people that don't own rental property. They just think that, that there's all these terrible things that can happen, and do things happen? Absolutely. But, it's not nearly as bad as, especially if you own one house, it's not as bad as you think it is.
Right. So what are those, if you had a little checklist of things that you want to make sure to where that property is at least going to be that base hit for you, do you have, 3 or 4 things that you're definitely, looking for?
So for me, I think the first thing I look at is overall condition. For your very first deal, you don't want to get into something that's going to be a heavy lift or need to be a ton of renovation, because most people, if you don't have a background in it, they don't really understand just how expensive it is, or just how much, like I said, I always jokingly say you pull on a string, and the whole shirt unravels, you just never know. And so, for your first one, I always tell people you want to kind of do something that's more of like a cosmetic. If you're flipping, a cosmetic flip. If you're renting or you're going to buy, it's like a long-term buy and hold. I always say to kind of look at the area. If you're buying, the cheaper properties there's a reason why they're cheaper, right? They're either in a bad area, or they're going to have a rougher tenant class, or, whatever the case may be. And it's, you might be able to get into a house for $5,000 down, right? Because it's a $50,000 house. But at least where I live, most $50,000 houses are not in the greatest areas. And so buying in those areas comes with headaches. And, and so you just have to evaluate that, look at the area, look at who your prospect tenant is. So who do you think you may not be buying the house for who's there now, but who's going to be there next year? Who can you draw to the property? those are things that like I evaluate. Then we always look at like if it's going to be a house, it would be a foundation. Are the bones of the structure good? Because you can always change the flooring and the paint and the bathroom and the layout. Those kinds of things. But if the bones are not good, or there's a bunch of major things that are going on with the property, that it's probably not the one you want to get involved with for your first deal. And I think too, if you can find a mentor or somebody to team up with, is something that can be huge, because it spreads your risk out. You might not be able to own 100% of the first deal, but you can go alongside somebody and they can kind of help navigate you, so you're not because like I said, the worst thing you do is buy one and then you miss something in your due diligence, and it completely ruins the deal for you. And then you're either lost money or you're scared to death to do it. And you're like, see, then everybody's like, see, I told you it was a terrible idea, when really it can be amazing.
Right. So kind of, moving forward in your career with this, tell me a little bit about, where things have gone and how things have grown and what you're doing now.
Yeah. So for me, like I said, I worked with that guy for a year. I realized multifamily was the way I wanted to go. I had money that I had saved, but I was like, you're kind of in this position where if you're really small, you might own everything, but then you have to do all the work because you're not big enough to really employ anybody, or, you pay property management, a third party property management company, but then you're not making any money. And, depending on what your goals are, if you're buying it to just have it there to, for the tenant to pay down your equity, or if you're actually trying to cash flow and make money every month, if whatever you're buying, you want to at least be able to get 1% of the rent. They always kind of say, they call it the 1% rule. But, for me, trying to maintain a career, I was like, I got to get bigger. I got to get big enough to where it makes sense to hire a management company, or it makes sense to employ people or do whatever. So the first deal, I took the money I had, went and found another residential investor that had equity in properties, kind of pitched the idea to him to, let's go buy an apartment complex. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. So we pooled our money together. We went and I found a 50 unit that was in a tertiary market outside of Columbus. And that was the first deal that we did. And it was a heavy lift. It took a lot of renovation. It took a lot of kind of like changing out the tenant class that was there, because the former owner was didn't really have a real process of how he vetted people that he was renting to. So we had a pretty big turnover the first year. We renovated 42, I think, out of the 50 units in a year. So, but again, my strength was construction. I was great at managing contractors, doing the work, just all that kind of sweat equity type stuff. And, then we refied in a year and made $1 million in equity, which paid back, our investors got our investment out, and then it enabled us to go buy another complex. And so that was kind of where it started. And now we've grown quite a bit since then.
Right. So it's the Stream Group. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that's the company name. Yep. There's myself and Tim Shaw are the main principals of the Stream Group. We have another partner, Tim Watke, who's involved kind of on a deal by deal basis, whatever he wants to get involved with. But yeah, so in Central Ohio now we have over 600 units, all apartment complexes, multifamily. And then we have, between the three of us, we have equity holdings in over 2,000 doors nationwide. And then last year we vertically integrated. So we brought our property management in-house, because we had just like time and again, we had negative experiences with other management companies. And then we've brought the construction in-house as well, just, with COVID and the labor shortage and, everything going on, it just made the most sense for us to bring it in-house and kind of deal with it directly.
Yeah, I understand about the subcontracting world. It's very difficult to find people if they don't work directly for you right now.
Yeah, and that's part of, like I said, that's also part of the thing too on your first deal, how you can get burned is, if you don't know, like if you've never really dealt with the trades world, there's a lot of great people out there that are highly skilled, but there's also a lot of people that are kind of like a wolf in sheep's clothing, and you can lose a lot of money to bad contractors and bad work. And like I said, that's why for me, it's like the safest way is for you to find somebody already doing it and either team up with them on a deal, or, pay them to mentor you, or if they'll mentor you for free, or they'll kind of guide you. Like that is the safest, kind of best way to guarantee you're going to do good on your first one.
Right. So for the majority of our, listenership, we are a lot of, real estate agents and brokers themselves. So, from the real estate agent side, what do you look for in an agent when you're looking for a new property to purchase, or, what are you looking for when you're teaming up with the agents?
So for us, like brokers, we deal with brokers a lot, and we do a lot of pocket listings. We have like a lot of great relationships, and that's really what it's for, right? I mean, I want to be successful in buying a property that's going to make me money, but we also understand that the brokers and the realtors, I mean, their time is very valuable, and they're getting paid and they're earning their living on the commissions they make from the sales. And so, one, we want people to know that we're serious when we start, or kind of like opening a new relationship with a realtor or a broker, that, hey, here's our history, here's what we close on, here's what we've done. So they know that they're not wasting their time. And then for us, and what I think is the easiest thing, or, if you're a realtor or broker and an investor approaches you, just tell them, like, look, we give them like a box of like, here's what our properties look like. Here's what we want to buy. We want to buy something from like 1970s to 1995. We want to buy stuff that's mainly brick, construction, or we'll do vinyl siding if it's within a certain, maybe like more like 90s build. We want, if it has to have some form of air conditioning. We prefer central heat and air, but we will accept if it's through the wall air conditioners, and we give a pretty detailed like list of like, here's what our ideal property is. And then if they come across it, they just know, like in the back of their mind, hey, I got guys that will buy this, or hey, take a look at this. And so we get sent stuff all the time that we evaluate. And I think too, for us, is evaluating the property quickly and then getting response back to the broker or the realtor saying, hey, this is going to work for us, or no, it won't, because again, their time is valuable just like mine is. And I don't like drag them along, and well, maybe we will, and we'll get back in a couple of days. And, then 7 days later, we still haven't. And they're, so I think understanding that and just approaching the relationships professionally. And then, I think that, realtors can be great because they have they have the ability to do a lot of marketing. They have a lot of, direct sales. They can call people. They have people coming in. They hear about stuff in the office that maybe, that never makes it to market. And so for us, that's what we try to network a lot with them. So that way, when they have that thing come into the office, let's say they have a 20 unit that somebody, they know a seller and he just happens to have something he's willing to sell. Like, we don't want it to go to market. We want it to come in. And they're like, hey, we got people that'll buy this. And they call us directly, and then we just do it that way. So,
yeah. So when you're first starting out and like building those relationships with an agent, how are you connecting? Is it, just word of mouth, or how do you start building those initial relationships?
Yeah, I mean, word of mouth. We go to a lot of I'll go to like a lot of real estate meetups, and like realtor, you'll find realtors there because they're trying to connect with investors too. Because most investors, like some of the guys I know that do high volume, I mean, they don't even see the house. The realtor will call them and they'll say, hey, this is the age, this is the square footage, this is the amount of bedrooms, here's what it looks like. Yep, I'll do it. You know what I mean? They'll close within a couple of days. So, it's great for if you're a realtor and you're not going to those kinds of things, find like a local RIA to go to and meet with the investors. But, for me, like too, we'll go to different either brokerages or, and just try to network, drop off our cards, let people know what we're doing. We do podcasts like this and just different social media ways of getting our name out there and just saying, hey, look, we're legitimate buyers. If this is the criteria we're looking for, and if you find something that meets this criteria, we can close and, we're guaranteed. So.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of it, just that drive to be networking all the time and, that drive to grow. I think a lot of times you can get kind of, stagnant in things. And all of a sudden you realize you haven't grown at all in 2 years. And you wonder what's been going on. Well, you haven't put the effort in.
Right. And I think that's important to always like every quarter, kind of like look back and say, okay, what did I do or what did I not do? What can I do better? And then apply that. But like you said, if you get comfortable in it, you could let a whole year go by and you haven't done anything else, like if you're a realtor and your sales are dropping, like what are some creative ways that you can find either new buyers or new sellers, and like, I know a lot of realtors do like the direct mail marketing and they do those things, and so you might be able to team up with an investor that doesn't have this scalability to do those things. And, but like I said, it gives you're the kind of the connector. So networking with sellers and also networking with buyers is always super important, and you just never know. Like there's so many times in my career thus far in real estate where, a deal that happened was through like 3 relationships that I had. I met one guy or a person, who introduced me to somebody else, who ended up I did a deal with or whatever. And you just, you never ever know. Like you said, networking every day, trying to expand your, what do they say? Your network is your net worth.
Right.
Right. That's a great thing.
And keeping up with that network also, not just doing that one deal or passing off that one name and then never reaching back out again. I think is always, even if even if that agent wasn't necessarily the one that completed the deal, if they were the connector between you and the eventual, person that helped you get the deal back, if they just reach back out to you, make sure everything went well, everything was great, that's going to leave a great taste in your mouth for, their business style.
Yeah. And something that we've done too is like, in a situation like that, where maybe like I know somebody who connects me with somebody else, and I end up doing the deals theirs. We've like paid people for the connection, just because as a thank you, saying, without you connecting us, we would have had this opportunity. So, we've done that as well, just as I think it's just kind of from the investor standpoint, taking care of those connections, because like you said, I mean, it's, if you, for me, it's finding a deal through somebody else and they're not directly affected or being paid by it. I mean, it means a lot to them to take care of them a little bit.
Right. The kind of going off onto more the business growth kind of topic. A lot of our listeners are also people that are thinking about, starting their own brokerages and building their own teams. So when you were, from the ground floor and kind of building this business to where it is now, what were, I guess, those first driving factors that said, what, we really want to start building it more and more? I know you said, having that generational wealth and being able to bring this into your family.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but like from a business standpoint, I think like Tim and I just kind of sat down and we were like, where do we really want this to go? Because when him and I met, he was kind of doing residential and had been in the commercial world for a while. He has his realtor's license. I mean, so he's been kind of buying and selling friends and family, kind of that kind of stuff. And then he was doing some bigger commercial projects. And I don't have my license. I never have, and so that was appealing. But we really kind of sat down and said, okay, like, where do we want to go? Where do we want this to go? Or where do we see it going in like 5 years, 10 years? And then we kind of worked backwards to say, okay, well, now we know where the end goal is. How do we get there? And so we kind of, well, first we need to do this, and we need to hire this we need to hire a person to do this. And these are the tasks we need them to do. And here's we need to hire maintenance. And okay, well, the maintenance guys, and we kind of structured it that way. And then we were like, anything that we felt like continued to be a bottleneck, we were like, we either need to give it to somebody else that we already employ, or we need to hire somebody to handle that. And, that book that really helped me was Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. If you've ever heard of that. I mean, that was a great book for me, because I'm being in the fire service my whole career. We're very much like hands-on, we're going to do it. We can fix it. We can, solve the problems. And, in business and growing, for me, it was like, there's things that I love to do. And there's other things I'd find myself procrastinating because I don't want to do it. And it, just talks about that book, like, when you come across something like that, finding the person, finding somebody to do that is the quickest way to get where you want. And so that was, like I said, that how we kind of use it as a framework or as a model to, we kind of outlined all the different things that needed to be covered. And then we'd start hiring people that would be their job. And that's how we were able to do it successfully. And then we were able to take on more because of it.
Right. I really like that idea of kind of evaluating every aspect of things and, what are the time commitments that are going to be taken? Because even that, you said there's a lot of things that you really enjoy and other things you don't. But then sometimes, things you really enjoy doing, they might take up a whole bunch of time and you just can't allocate, that amount of time to it to grow your business. So you do need to bring on somebody. I know, like, there's a lot of tasks that I love doing, but it's more on the creative side and it takes a long time. And I have to bring in somebody else to do it, or nothing will ever get done. Yeah.
And a lot of guys too, I know they use VAs and whatnot. I mean, a lot of people are scared to kind of get into the virtual assistant world, but there's a ton of super educated people, over in the Philippines and these different areas that we actually have a guy, his name is Matt Larson, and he started a whole company, like an HR company over, in that area, because he was using them. And it was kind of like, for me, like the first time that I started using it, I was like, man, I'm like super nervous. How do you really know what you're getting into? Like, how do you know, are they really gonna be able to do what you want? Can you trust them? And so we elected to use like Matt's company, where they kind of vet everybody and you're going to get what but I mean, it's some of those tasks, like you said, that are time consuming, that maybe aren't revenue generating, you can hand off to those people, and It's much cheaper to have them do it. And honestly, the educational level that they have, I mean, you've got people with master's degrees and master's degree, they're highly educated people that are just like, dying to work and love it. And so, that's also helped us grow where we can keep the cost within reason and get those tasks accomplished.
Yeah, definitely. I think for the agents or for the brokers, just that, that lead generation or even the follow-up, type tasks, those are great tasks for VAs to do.
Yeah. Yep.
So when with your background in the fire service and everything, I got to imagine that when you do bring on people that, kind of that company culture and just kind of that building a good, tight-knit group of people has got to be pretty important to you as well.
Yeah, so we're pretty big. Like it's funny because we structure like everything. That's all we've ever known as the fire service, and we're kind of like paramilitary. So we kind of, we believe kind of like in the chain of command, and we believe in like, the people that we put in the kind of like management positions are, we have to be able to trust them, but we also don't want to like, I kind of give you like, hey, here's what we want, but I'm not going to tell you how to get there. Like we want people to be able to buy into kind of like what our motto is, or what our just what the way that we view things and want to run things. And then we say, hey, here's the standard. And then, we don't necessarily tell you how to achieve it, because we want people that can be creative and can think on their own. And nobody wants to be micromanaged. I hate it. And I don't think it's like a super successful way to grow and oversee things. And so that's been really successful. And we've had a lot of great positive feedback from that. So, we have a lot of people that we have employed for a while now, and they seem to love it.
Right. So before we wrap up, we're kind of at the first quarter of 2022. What's the rest of this year looking like for you guys?
So we've got a couple of multifamily deals that we're closing on, or we're working on getting kind of to the closing table right now. And then a large one that we did is we've got we're doing a development deal right now that is kind of like in the early stages, but it's 150 acres that will be kind of earmarked. There's 120 of the acres are kind of earmarked for residential development, which we'll do the entitlements and whatnot for that. And then our goal is to sell it off to like a residential developer. And then they have another section of the land is zoned multifamily and assisted living. And so our goal is to ultimately do the multifamily section, but we'll see what we end up doing. We may end up building the assisted living thing and doing like a triple net lease or selling it off. We don't really know what yet, but this will be a pretty big deal. It'll take up quite a bit of our bandwidth for now. And then, like I said, as we're always evaluating stuff, and as they come open, and I think so that's the buying side, and then just fine tuning, our processes and whatnot for the management and construction part.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty incredible what you guys have been doing, if you are still, with the full-time firefighter in there as well, because once you go into that mode, it gets pretty, you're locked in, for those 24-hour shifts.
And that's what's been so important with us hiring like the right people on our team, because then if I'm at the station, I don't have to, I have people that I can know and trust. And then Tim and I work out different shifts. So one of us is always off with the business, so that's also helpful. Like I said, if I was trying to do it all by myself, it wouldn't probably work, but because we have, I have the right people around me, it's helped us to be successful.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me this morning.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I want to thank Seth for joining us today. And I think it's awesome that he's been able to focus on creating generational wealth for his family and growing the Stream Group, all while maintaining his full-time fire service gig. So once again, if you think you or someone else on your team has an awesome story or a tip to share with our community, send us a message at feedback@smartagents.com. Well, that wraps things up for this episode. But remember, follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure to subscribe to the Smart Agents YouTube channel. Again, I'm Michael Walter, and we'll see you on the next episode.